Festival's son to the world premiere at the Pan-African International Film Festival, and he came to the matinee that was created especially to have a additional screening because of the popularity that the film had created at the festival itself. And Malachi actually wrote a really nice essay based upon what he saw, and he sent me a photograph of himself in white gloves. What he said in his essay, which I thought was really powerful, is that Ali was a man who showed what manhood was. And coming from an 8-year-old, I thought that was extremely powerful. So I would imagine if an 8-year-old kid can extract that from the film, what it could, I think it would speak volumes to a number of other young elementary, junior high, high school, university level students across the nation.
Questions?
I had an observation last night and kind of a question as well, so I'll just repeat it and we can share it with the people here. You see in the stories of Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and in more contemporary sense, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, when they decided to take a stand, whether it's against the war, against racism, or some controversial issue at the time, they were all alone. Very few people with them. When Malcolm died, there was only a very few small handful of Muslims that came to bury him, and that was under hostile conditions. When Martin Luther King spoke out against the Vietnam War, many churches, including ones in this city, would not even allow him to speak. They turned their back on him. Muhammad Ali was alone, didn't have much money during this time. And when Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf decided not to observe the national anthem, even some Muslims were like, oh, we can stand, we can, they were not backing him up. But now they're inviting him for fundraisers. He's got a very nice documentary on Showtime. He's been invited for interviews. He's welcomed now. So you see, like 20, 30, 40 years after the fact, or even after someone dies, a society sometimes wants to embrace them and refashion them and homogenize them and make them something else. Even before Muhammad Ali died, he was loved because he wasn't speaking the same way. He lost his voice. And, he wasn't, I guess, a threat to them. So can you kind of speak to that? I know you've seen it as well as I have. Can you kind of speak to that and maybe give your opinion on why that happens? And
I think to paraphrase a adage that I heard years ago is that a prophet is almost never respected or recognized in his own homeland. I think that could be expanded or extended into a prophet is not necessarily seen as such during his own time. And as I look at an element of my community, which I gave some serious thought to along the lines of what you're addressing or you're asking me to address, I feel that the overwhelming majority of African Americans are not as innovative or as creative or as cutting edge or living life on the edge as they may be portrayed in modern media. I think that for a people who have had almost no opportunity to have a solid foundation and to build a family that will create generational significance for themselves, that when someone gets a government job or they get to work at the post office, they're going to hold on to that as much as they possibly can. And any time somebody like a Malcolm X comes along, or even a Dr. King, especially during his latter years, begins to speak out as he did against the war in Vietnam, they become a threat to the tenuous illusion of security that these people feel that they have. I mean, just talking about Dr. King, the Southern Baptist Convention during the last year of his life made him. They uninvited him to attend. They did not want to associate with him. And when he made the statement at Riverside Baptist Church in December of 1967, he said that America is the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. That's not what people talk about on January 15th when we're celebrating Dr. King's birthday. What most people, if you ask them if there's any quote that you can remember about Dr. King, it's "I had a dream." And actually, the "I had a dream" speech is not really the original name of that speech or the title of that speech, because it was the bounce check speech. He was coming to Washington, D.C. in 1963 to say to African Americans that you have worked for over 400 years in this nation, and it has been done without compensation, and we're here to ask for that compensation. And basically, the United States government has given us a check in which it has denied us an opportunity to cash. When we go to cash the check, it says insufficient funds. And that was the crux of the bounce check speech, which got turned into the "I have a dream" speech, which was a total erroneous reading and interpretation of that one speech itself. But going beyond that, in 1968, on April 4th, when he died, Coretta Scott King was not in a position where she could even buy groceries that week. So it's amazing how we've got these huge monuments that we've created in Washington, D.C. of Dr. King, and we have a birthday that celebrates his life in his name and his spirit. But at the time in which he was alive, a lot of people, especially those of the Christian faith, did not want to return his phone calls. They did not want to walk down the street with him. They did not want to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner with him. They didn't want to even be seen having a conversation with him on the street. He was status non gratis. And a lot of those very people who didn't want to talk to him during his lifetime are now the ones who are talking the loudest now about how close they were.
Exactly.
Okay, and the same thing can be said about Malcolm. I'm hearing some, I have a strong affinity towards Islam myself, and I'm from Harlem. I heard Malcolm speak when I was a small kid. Of course, he was on 115th Street, Lenox Avenue, when I lived on 115th Street between 5th and Lenox. And so my older brother, my mother was always telling me, you need to stay with your older brother, do what he does. And so my older brother would stop, and he would listen to what Malcolm had to say, and so I just stopped too. But where Malcolm was towards the latter days of his life, there was a lot of people that did not want to associate with him. And when you take a look at someone like Colin Kaepernick, I mean, so I'm not talking about ancient history. I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick just in 2016, who takes a knee, and he does it in the spirit that any Marine would do it if there was a fallen soldier. That was the reason that he took the actual knee, was to respect those who were fallen in terms of African American men who were slain, who were unarmed, who were in some cases walking or running away from the police at the time in which they got shot in the back. And nothing is more atrocious when we move into 2020 and take a look at 9 minutes and 46 seconds of seeing a man have his life, the life literally squeezed out of his body. There is a strong feeling of taking a position to speak out or to symbolically represent that there is something wrong in this nation. And what Colin Kaepernick did, in my opinion, is simply standing on the shoulders of what Muhammad Ali did in 1967. And what I'm trying to, Rauf,
Abdul Rauf, yeah.
It's one thing to think that if people think that Michael Jordan's a great basketball player, you haven't seen great basketball player until you see Rauf play. And for someone who simply felt that it was not something that was within his spirit to stand up during the Pledge of Allegiance, and he was doing it 6 months before the media gave him any attention. And now they're saying, oh, you're unpatriotic, you're not an American, you're against the country. And that's not what he was in any way, shape, or form trying to convey. He had taken a position that he did not feel that a Star-Spangled Banner, which actually has a clause in it that is very denigrating to Africans. Why should anybody of African descent even want to stand up and sing the Star-Spangled Banner that was written in a time and has a clause in it that actually demonizes black people? It's antithetical, it's counterproductive. It makes absolutely no sense to get up and praise that which denigrates you. But nobody wants to talk about it, just like nobody wants to talk about what Dr. King said in the Riverside Church, or that Dr. King said shortly after the Civil Rights Bill was passed in 1965 to Harry Belafonte. Harry, I feel I've integrated my people into a burning house. But when we talk about Dr. King and things that are worth remembering and reflecting upon and trying to analyze and dissect, it's not that. It's always the "I have a dream" speech. That's about the sum total of how we talk about King. So we sanitize him. And the same thing with regard to Ali. In his later years, when he lost his ability to actually speak, there were others who spoke for him, not in the spirit in which he would have spoke for himself. I hope I answered your question.
No doubt.
I didn't mean to go on a tangent.
No.
My apologies.
You did it.
Any more questions?
Well, if there aren't any more, I want to first thank you all for taking the time out of a Sunday afternoon to come and see Ali's comeback. And if you want to have some memorabilia to take home with you, there are T-shirts and there are DVDs and there are posters that are outside that will help to cover the costs for the budget to make this film. Thank you all very much for being here.